Hey guys, welcome back to A-Level Lessons. We're going to be moving on to the next part today on floods. So in the previous video, we've really gone through what cyclones are all about, right? You learned the rough structure of a cyclone, what are the conditions required for a cyclone to occur. So now we're going to be moving on to the next part of this kind of like water area syllabus sort of thing, which is going to be looking at floods. So we're going to be looking at, I would think that this is already steering towards your human geography side of things, but we still have to remember that we're in the realm of physical geog. Okay, we're going to be looking at the causes of floods, the effects of floods, as well as what are some of the strategies that can be used to manage floods. So in this video, we're going to be looking at the causes of floods, so the various different causes. Hopefully you learn a thing or two. So go ahead and get your notebooks out. Alright, let's go ahead and start this video. Alright, so what are the characteristics or mechanisms that you need to first know for floods? So when it comes to these characteristics, I would say that as far as possible, try to bring them up in your essays. Okay, when you're writing essays, make sure that you bring these mechanisms to light. Okay, let your examiner know that you understand what these mechanisms are. So the first one is going to be flood magnitude, right? And the second one is going to be flood frequency. So magnitude, as the name suggests, okay, is how strong something is, okay, the value, okay, of how the strength of something. So it's how impactful or how strong the flood is actually okay. So certain causes or certain factors will lead to different magnitudes of floods. Okay, the frequency is how often, right? How often does the flood take place? So that will be something you need to know as well. Okay, so look at the various physical and human factors, okay, that contribute to the flood magnitude and frequency, okay, as well as the extent, okay, of the flood magnitude and the frequency, okay, the increased or decreased frequency of floods. That is something that you want to bring about when it comes to talking about each of the various factors that we're going to go through in a bit. So the physical factors first, okay, we're always going to be studying this from a physical geog perspective. So always remember that the physical factors are likely to be the more important ones in a certain aspect. So the first one is going to be excessive precipitation. Right, what does excessive precipitation mean? Okay, it means that there is extremely high overbearing amounts of rainfall. Right, so precipitation is always related to rainfall. So prolonged rainfall over several days, okay, means that there will be higher water content in rivers and on the surface. Okay, so you always, if you want to, you can always break it down into your different Copenhagen climatic zones. So in the tropics, for example, okay, monsoon rains, hurricanes, cyclones, and convectional rainfall will result in these excessive levels of precipitation. Right, as you have learned before, okay, I'll leave a link in the top right corner of the screen. When it comes to your Copen climates, okay, you'll notice that the humid climates, the humid tropics, tends to have overall year, across the entire year, high amounts of rainfall. So this is usually due to convectional rainfall. It is due to monsoon rain. All of these are actually what brings about this excessive precipitation. Okay, and then as we have just learned in the previous video, right, cyclones, okay, they require areas of intense heat as well. Okay, and that can be found in the tropics, the humid tropics. So that could also be an underlying reason for this excessive precipitation to occur. So when there is excessive precipitation, okay, brought about by these various characteristics of or factors, okay, it can result in overland flow, right? Your Hawthornian overland flow. Okay, I've gone through this before. Go check out my previous video. I think it's on flows and storages, on what HOF is all about. Okay, but when rainfall intensity exceeds infiltration capacity and the rate of infiltration, it would result in this thing called the overland flow. Okay, some of you may call it surface runoff. Okay, over here I'll use HOF, okay, a Hawthornian overland flow, and this is what would cause the flooding to occur. Okay, when there's overland flow, it means that the water is not being absorbed into the soil, okay, into the ground. So as a result, there is more water that's on the surface, and this is when flooding actually starts to occur. So climate can increase both flood frequency and magnitude. So just an evaluative point over here. Okay, climate, as we have learned throughout this entire syllabus, okay, we're already coming to the end. You should already know that climate is the macro factor of this entire syllabus, right? It is the one that is always going to be the main driving force behind a lot of these various factors or these various mechanisms from actually being extrapolated. Alright, the next one is basin characteristics. So this would be when we are talking about a river basin. Okay, river basin, your drainage basin hydrology I've gone through before. So I'm just going to go very brief over here. Okay, when there's a smaller basin size, okay, it would respond more quickly than a large one. Okay, meaning to say that a smaller basin size definitely cannot hold as much water as a large one. Okay, so this will lead to overflowing very quickly, okay, and leads to flooding. Basins that are equidimensional are more likely to flood, okay, meaning that they are more or less more equal in their dimensions. Okay, they are more proportionate, okay, be it the width, the height, the depth. Okay, so they are likely to flood more than one that is not equidimensional. Okay, meaning to say that it could be, let's say, very, very long in terms of its length, very, very deep in terms of its breadth. Okay, those are not likely to flood as easily. Relief, okay, when there are steeper slopes, okay, definitely there's going to be more surface runoff and overland flow. Okay, steeper slopes, there'll be more water that will run down the surface. And the number of tributaries, okay, a dense stream network, okay, will lead to more rapid rainfall periods, okay, as well as shorter lag time. Okay, essentially when you have a lot of tributaries, okay, there are basically a lot of these small little rivers that connect to the main river channel. Okay, this would mean that there is more discharge, okay, more volume of water, okay, which leads to greater flooding, right? Especially when there is high rainfall, they are all going to exceed the amount that they can, the river discharge, the bankful discharge that they can actually carry, okay, leading to greater flooding in the entire area. Alright, the next one is soil antecedent moisture conditions, right? What is soil antecedent moisture conditions? So this is when the soil is actually saturated due to a previous episode of rainfall, right? So when the soil is saturated due to previous rainfall, what happens is that subsequent rainfall, okay, let's say the next day, right, tomorrow when it rains again, the water is actually unable to infiltrate the soil. Okay, reason being is that the soil has already a lot of moisture that is contained from the previous day's rainfall. Okay, especially if it was high. Okay, it cannot infiltrate and then percolate fast enough. So a lot of water is actually stored in the pore spaces. Okay, so this will allow the soil to actually reach infiltration capacity faster. Okay, and this leads to saturated overland flow, right? The reason why it is not Hawthornian and it's saturated overland flow is because the soil is already very saturated, right? It's already very saturated from the previous day's rainfall. So this leads to this thing called SOF. Hence, this will increase the magnitude of the flood definitely. So soil antecedent moisture, okay, tends to be more of a localized factor, okay, but definitely can have very, very huge repercussions if rainfall tends to happen on almost every other hour, every other day. Alright, the next one is coastal storm surges. Okay, you've not really heard of this before. Okay, storm surges are essentially low pressure systems. So they are basically like cyclones, right? They're essentially cyclones, okay, whereby it increases water level along the coast. So it is actually very, very close to the coastal areas, right? And it's kind of like a depression that occurs right above the seawater. So this will lead to a sudden surge in water, okay, a rise in the water levels along the coastal areas, which can basically overflow onto the land. Okay, think of it like a mini hurricane or like a mini cyclone that actually pushes the water onto the surface of the land. Right, next we move on to the human factors, okay, anthropogenic factors, another word for human factors. So the first one is going to be urbanization, definitely. Okay, so the urbanization, okay, actually increases magnitude and the frequency of floods. Why? Okay, how does this actually happen? Right, urbanization refers to, let's say, the creation of any sort of highly impermeable surfaces, such as roads, roofs, or pavements. So this can actually increase the overland flow. Okay, actually what happens is that, let's say if you concretize the road, I don't know if that's a word, okay, but let's say you lay concrete on the roads, above soil, above dirt, above the ground. Okay, what happens is it actually prevents water from infiltrating. Okay, because such surfaces are less permeable, right? So as a result, it leads to greater Hawthornian overland flow instead. So the construction of dense network of smooth drains, okay, this can also lead to, for example, your sewers, okay, it can also lead to an increase in the drainage density. It can lead to greater amounts of water that's being stuck everywhere. Okay, and the modification of natural river channels, okay, this will lead to a fall in the carrying capacity, right? Let's say if you modify a river channel, you add in a bridge, you add in let's say some sort of structure to the river, okay, that will actually prevent water from being able to pass through as easily. Okay, it reduces the overall capacity of the river, okay, leading to greater chances of it reaching its bankful discharge. Right, if you don't know all these things like bankful discharge, okay, go ahead and look back at my video on the flood hydrographs. Okay, I'll leave a link in the top corner of the screen. Flood hydrographs, very important for ensuring that you know how on earth floods even come about in the first place. Okay, when does a flood actually becomes a flood? Alright, the next one, or the last factor, is going to be deforestation. We're going to be learning a lot about deforestation very soon, right? But essentially what happens is that it actually reduces infiltration capacity with lesser vegetation cover, right? Vegetation can actually help to absorb a lot of this water, right? All your big trees, your plants, and a lot of water is actually lost in the process, as we've learned in your drainage basin, right? Your inputs, outputs, flow, storages. Okay, we've learned a lot over there. So this leads to overland flow, okay, when your forests are actually being cleared away. Okay, one more thing is that it loosens soil binding capacity. So this leads to greater soil erosion. Okay, we'll learn more about soil erosion very, very soon. And this increases the sediments, okay, that actually get washed into the river channel, which can lead to clogging. Okay, when there's a lot of huge sediments that are released into the river channel, right, it would all get stuck along the way, and this prevents water from actually passing through. So this will lead to greater floods, okay, especially in terms of increasing the flood magnitude. Okay, because a lot of water is jammed, you kind of think of it like it's basically like a bunch of sediments, and the water is just trying to flow, but it can't flow, so it just pushes and it overflows onto the land. Right, so that is what deforestation can bring about. Okay, it is more of unintended side effects, unintended consequences that are brought about, okay, increasing the flood magnitude of a flood. So in sum, okay, we're going to move on to your exam requirements. Very, very simple. You just need to be able to explain and discuss the various factors that actually causes these floods to occur. Can link these causes of floods to the flood frequency and the magnitude for stronger evaluation. When it comes to your exams, okay, as far as possible, when you're writing each paragraph on, let's say, the causes of floods, and you're writing on a specific factor that causes these floods, make sure that at the end of the paragraph, you try to link it back to how this factor, right, let's say soil antecedent moisture conditions, either leads to an increase in the flood frequency or leads to an increase in the flood magnitude. Right, and likewise for the other factors, okay, your basin characteristics, excessive precipitation, okay, does it lead to an overall increase in the flood magnitude or an increase in the flood frequency, or either that decrease, right? It's really dependent on the question. So that will be how you ensure that you score and get a good grade for these sort of essays, okay, on the causes of floods. If not, that's actually all I have for this video, right? If you did learn something and you did enjoy it, okay, be sure to give it a like, as well as to subscribe to the channel. And feel free to leave any questions or comments if you have in the comment section below. I will answer them. I think this is a very, very simple part on floods. Okay, we're going to be looking at effects as well as strategies after this, which can be a bit more complicated in a certain aspect. So stay tuned for those videos, and I will be uploading them very, very soon. So if not, that's all I have. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.